Sure. Here's a more expanded and conversational rewrite of the original topic about Marc Miller's response to Canada-US border security concerns. Marc Miller responds to Canada-US border security concerns. So, yeah, recently Marc Miller, Canada's Minister of Public Safety, spoke out about the growing concerns surrounding border security between Canada and the United States. I mean, this has been a pretty hot topic, especially with the increased challenges faced by both nations due to illegal crossings, drug smuggling, and other security issues at the border. It's not exactly an easy issue to tackle, right? There's a lot at stake here, not only for the governments involved, but also for the people living in these regions, the businesses, and even international relations as a whole. So, let's dive into what Miller had to say and how he's approaching this delicate situation. To start with, Marc Miller didn't sugarcoat the fact that security at the border is, well, a huge concern. Right, with rising numbers of people crossing the border illegally, whether it's in search of a better life, fleeing from dangerous conditions, or just trying to get away from certain situations, there's been an uptick in the number of incidents. That said, Miller acknowledged that while border security is important, the way it's managed needs to take into account the long-standing relationship between Canada and the United States. And this is something a lot of people might overlook. Both countries share not only the longest undefended border in the world, but also a complex and cooperative relationship that's built on mutual trust, trade, and shared values. But of course, that doesn't mean Canada is ignoring the need for stronger security measures. Yeah, that's not the case at all. Miller pointed out that while they must secure the border, they also have to maintain the openness that has allowed the two countries to function so closely together. Right, it's all about balance. Canada doesn't want to go down the path of implementing overly strict measures that could harm the flow of trade, travel, or even cultural exchanges. I mean, both countries are tightly knit in terms of their economies, and millions of people cross the border daily for work, leisure, or to visit family. So I see what he's getting at. If you put up too many barriers, it could have a negative impact on people's everyday lives. Miller's statement also emphasized the idea that border security isn't just about enforcement. It's about understanding the broader context and working together to find solutions. Okay, that's a key part here. Simple yes or no. There needs to be a delicate balance between strict enforcement and a human rights-based approach. And that's where cooperation between the two governments really matters. Miller acknowledged that Canada and the U.S. share intelligence and work together on security initiatives. They're not operating in silos. They need each other, and it's essential that both countries remain on the same page, especially when it comes to policing and monitoring the border. Now, when Miller talked about cooperation, he wasn't just talking about sharing information between authorities. He was also referring to better coordination in terms of border management and the use of technology. He pointed out that both governments have been exploring ways to improve the security infrastructure, things like surveillance systems, data sharing platforms, and modern technologies that can detect illegal crossings or criminal activity in real time. Okay, these are huge steps forward. I mean, if you think about it, with the advancement of technology, there are a lot of opportunities to improve how the border is monitored and managed, while also ensuring that people's privacy rights are respected. It's a fine line to walk, but it's something that both governments need to keep in mind. And, of course, let's talk about the current situation at the border. Right, Marc Miller didn't shy away from addressing the specific challenges both countries face. There are some significant concerns regarding the increasing number of irregular crossings, especially at places that aren't designated border checkpoints. These areas are more difficult to monitor, and it makes it easier for people to cross undetected. And to make matters more complicated, many of the people crossing in these areas are often unvetted or have no proper documentation, which raises security issues. Right, if you don't know who's crossing your border, it becomes a lot harder to prevent criminal activity or address potential security threats. Miller pointed out that addressing this issue requires smart, well-planned interventions, like more resources in key areas and better monitoring of regions that are hard to patrol. It's also worth noting that these illegal crossings are not just about people looking for a better life. They're also connected to organized crime and smuggling. So yeah, it's not just about the individuals trying to seek asylum, but also about the dangers posed by criminal organizations using the border to traffic drugs, weapons, or even people. This is a major point that Miller emphasized. He acknowledged that criminal elements exploiting the border for illegal activities put everyone at risk, not just the people trying to cross. Right, it's a serious issue because it undermines the safety of both countries. So, when you think about it, tighter border security isn't just a matter of stopping people. It's about stopping criminal organizations from using the border as a means of smuggling illegal goods and trafficking people. The challenge, though, is not to turn the border into a fortress. Right? Miller mentioned that Canada's approach would not be about building walls or imposing draconian laws that would alienate the people they're trying to help or deter those who might be fleeing persecution. He emphasized the importance of policies that are fair, but also that recognize the need for enforcement. There's a lot of gray area in situations like this, especially when you have so many humanitarian concerns mixed with national security priorities. I see what he's saying, though. There has to be a way to make sure the border stays secure without completely turning it into a place where people seeking refuge are criminalized. Marc Miller also acknowledged the economic implications of tighter border controls. Right, because let's be honest, cross-border trade is huge between Canada and the US. Both countries rely heavily on each other for goods and services, and any disruption to that flow could have serious consequences. I mean, think about it. Truck drivers, trade companies, tourists, and business owners all rely on the ability to move goods and services back and forth without facing major obstacles. So, yeah, creating a security system that allows for the safe movement of people and goods is incredibly important. The last thing anyone wants is a major disruption to cross-border commerce, which could have ripple effects on everything from the price of goods to the availability of certain products. That's something Miller was also keen to highlight. At the same time, though, he didn't shy away from addressing the political challenges that come with the issue. Right? The way the United States handles its border security and immigration policies can affect Canada in a big way, especially when it comes to things like deportations or policy shifts on asylum seekers. I mean, if the U.S. suddenly cracks down on immigration, it could lead to more people attempting to cross into Canada illegally. And if Canada doesn't have a solid policy framework in place, it could be difficult to manage that influx. So, Miller pointed out that it's not just about dealing with what's happening at the Canada-US border, but also about being mindful of the broader political and diplomatic picture. I see that it's really a matter of managing external factors as much as internal ones. Ultimately, Marc Miller's comments underscore the need for ongoing dialogue between Canada and the United States to address these complex issues. Right. He stressed that cooperation and mutual understanding between the two countries are absolutely essential. As he put it, border security can't be solved in isolation. It requires a collaborative approach where both nations are working together to ensure safety, humanitarian rights, and economic stability. So, yeah, in the end, what Miller seems to be saying is that while it's important to secure the border, it's also critical to keep it open in the ways that matter most, whether that's through trade, people-to-people connections, or humanitarian support. Both countries have a shared interest in addressing the problems while making sure that they don't undermine the core values that have defined the Canada-US relationship for so long. I hope this expanded version gave you a deeper insight into what Marc Miller said. It's definitely a multifaceted issue, balancing security concerns with humanitarian and economic factors, and it's clear that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Let me know if you want to dive into any specific aspects further. Thanks for watching our video. Please hit the button and subscribe the channel.